Happy Monday, everybody, and welcome to the Bison Video Blog, brought to you by Gate City Bank with the Forum's Jeff Kolpack. I'm Dom Izzo from WDAY Sports. Second round of the FCS Playoffs on tap for us on Saturday as North Dakota State will head west back to the Treasure State to match up with the Montana State Bobcats on Saturday afternoon.
Treasure State.
Bozeman.
I did not know
Montana
that's the
State
name.
Montana's the Treasure
It's not
State.
the Big Sky State.
No.
It's not.
So here we go.
Country?
And I will tell you this. This was my fourth ever Bison football road trip was to Bozeman in 2010. You wrote about it in your book, so I'll give you a shout out there for Horns Up. But for a generation of fans who maybe are late to the bandwagon on watching Bison football, this was the start where the Bison dynasty in my mind began. Was in Bozeman, Montana in December of 2010.
42-17. It was a game where the Bison were pretty decided underdog, if I remember right, going in. And the quarterbacks was Brock Jensen hurt? Was he healthy? Jose Moeller, what could he do? What could he bring to the table? And it was a close game. It was a tight game going into the fourth quarter.
Bison were down.
And the Bison, and here's where the birth of the power running game and the continued smacking of the other team and just, really going after it for four quarters. This is where we saw it pay off, I think, in the fourth quarter for the first time, especially at a national stage.
4 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, 28-zip. They outscored Montana State that day. We'll get to more on the Bobcats in a second. First, we're just released was the Missouri Valley Conference Awards, which I want to get to Cam Miller's second-team selection in a second. The Bison had 7 first-team picks, Jeff, led by a couple offensive linemen. Jalen Sundell and Jake Kubis were on there. Hunter Brosio in 2 separate spots at long snapper and fullback. Eli Mostart makes the second team. Kopp, Wisniewski, and Dylan Hendricks on the first team defensively. What do you make of the Bison selections here?
I think it's a pretty good representation, I think, of what NDSU brings to the table and brought to the table this year. If one player I think maybe deserved more was Gray Zabel.
I agree. Yep.
Right tackle, Gray Zabel. I think he had a really good year, and especially...
Not even honorable mention was odd on that with Zabel.
Well, he's got another year, Gray, so you got one more year to... Individual honors, obviously, if that's all what you're about, it's not going to be a big deal. It's fun to talk about. It's fun to banter. South Dakota State, obviously, with Gronowski and Isaiah Davis.
I can't remember co-sharing offensive MVP.
Does that mean the vote ended in a tie?
Correct,
or did it just kind of,
Who'd you vote for offensive
I voted
MVP?
Mark Gronowski.
Yeah.
I thought when you have so many weapons like South Dakota State with the Yankee twins and Isaiah Davis, Amar Johnson, I think it's the quarterback that makes that go. And much like, I know I've alluded to this before, Easton Stick did the same thing. Right. He made everything go. Statistically, maybe Easton wasn't the best in the FCS, but man, when it all said and done, he just threw it all together and put it all together for that team.
Speaking of put it all together, Cam Miller has done that. I was glad to see the voters recognize him to be second team quarterback this year.
Well, going into the season, he was not that second-team guy. You look at Theo Day, got all the accolades, and
Tommy Schuster did. Nick Baker did.
All I think were more highly regarded than Cam Miller. So heads off and hats off to the voters. And a lot of times you get the territoriality of it all, and they probably don't see it beyond just their guy, but. Cam Miller is certainly deserving of a second team.
Frankly, Jeff, maybe being sick of what the Bison, frankly, maybe to vote somebody else in the award. I don't think you can discount that whatsoever. All right, the opponent is Montana State. Bobcats, who I think for a long time were the preconceived second-best team in the country, certainly because of what they did against South Dakota State in September. It has been, I'd say, a long last month for Brent Vigen's team. They lost 2 of their last 3. They were blasted by Montana in the Brawl of the Wild game. We went over it that maybe they shouldn't even be seeded. They're 8-3. But they have a dominant home field advantage. They've won 26 straight games inside Bobcat Stadium.
That is an amazing stat. That's a stat that's going to be tough to take for NDSU to take them down. You look at this team, they are an incredible rushing team. Yep. I mean, they're first in the country in scoring offense, second in rushing offense. I mean, you got
third in total offense.
40.5 points per game. They're rushing at 293 a clip, almost 300 yards. And you look at their offensive line; they're not that big, but man, are they good! Yep. Look at this guy. I mean, they're shoving guys 5-7 yards deep. And when you have a guy, and the Davis name is threatening to really put a dent in it, the Bison this year. You look at Julius Davis, who's the transfer from the University of Wisconsin. What a year he's had, and he's tough. He looks tough.
718 yards, 6 touchdowns. He had his breakout game against Sacramento State when he was leaping over guys. But much like North Dakota State, they also have 2 quarterbacks that can run. Tommy Malott got injured on what was the 3rd play of the game in the national championship 2 years ago. And you see Sean Chambers there, number 10. He can throw it too, but they've got the two-headed monster, much like the Bison present.
They're just such teams that are so much alike.
Yeah.
And a lot of it has to do with the coaching staff,
No
obviously.
doubt about it.
Brent Vegan being an NDSU guy, former assistant, follows Craig Bowl to Wyoming. They run the West Coast. They do all that same stuff that NDSU did all those years. So, of course, if you're going to build a program in the Midwest and West, why wouldn't you do it like
Exactly.
NDSU?
I would say this for Vigs, knowing him, this is a game, especially to get the Bison in Bozeman. He's have to be aching for this one, Jeffrey. I have to imagine that.
Well, I would think Montana State fans in general. The stadium seats 22,000. Weather looks like it's going to be pretty good, so I would imagine
December 2nd, absolutely.
It's going to sell out, and NDSU better get its signals right as far as the silent count, because they're going to need it.
No doubt about that. It's going to be rocking there in a way that is different than 2010. The Bison were not a known commodity then when they went there. It's a way different feeling now.
Yeah, the only way Montanans really knew about NDSU back then was probably the 2003 upset.
Right.
That's when NDSU was a Division II team when it went into Missoula and beat the Grizzlies. But before that, with the transition, they had a good record. Yeah, they beat Minnesota and some FBS teams. But I don't know when you're skiing in Montana if you really care about that part of it.
Not one bit. And that's the different part of what lies in wait coming up on Saturday. Also back for the Bison, they got a little return here of Julian Wlodarczyk at the linebacker spot and added an instant zing to their defensive attack on Saturday. He had 6 tackles. He had the huge fumble recovery in the game against Drake. This is a guy that I think Matt Entz was probably thinking we may not see him again. He might be done for his career. And then I see him warming up on Saturday and he made an instant impact on the Bison defense.
Yeah, here's the thing about Julian. When a guy is out 6 games, you don't know when he comes back if he's going to be suited to the speed of the game because you've been on the sideline so long. Are you in shape, to play? Look at that play right there.
He was in shape, all right.
Are you in shape to play at that kind of a level? Man, did he answer the bell? And the answer obviously was a resounding yes. That, he's ready to play.
I'm intrigued. Does it matter if it's he or Benson start? I imagine Oscar's going to start again at the linebacker spot, but now you can have a true rotation at that outside linebacker position.
I suppose you want to keep Oscar there. You don't want to. You're playing better late in the year.
With that, right?
Might as well keep the same rotation going. But what Julian adds is he's a rangy guy. Yeah. He's 6'4", and they're going to need to find their best run stoppers on Saturday. That much is obvious. I mean, you can't let Montana State be 2nd and 2.
Can't get them down.
3rd and 1.
Nope.
Yep.
I mean, that also, you mentioned it on Hot Mic this morning. That means if it's Kubitz or Wirtz, they have to have their best game of the season at middle linebacker.
Yeah, what they call it, gap sound.
Yeah.
You got to be gap sound because you let Julian Davis, you give this guy a little crease. He's from Menominee Falls, Wisconsin. It's not like he's from somewhere that nobody knows about. He's a Midwest guy, used to cold weather. So and don't let him leap over you.
No, well, he hasn't done that yet, but you don't want him to be on the highlight reel, that's for certain. The highlight reel will show again for Bison fans that lived the game. That game in September, we watched it. I think a lot of us, I think you're part of it. I think Montana State won that game in Brookings, and they had every opportunity, honestly, to put the Jacks away in September at Dana J. Dykehouse Stadium. When you look at it, Jeff, they had an opportunity. They turned the football over. Chambers here, because Malott got hurt in this game. He didn't play a majority of it, threw a bad pick there. But SDSU had 2 chances inside the 5 and got 0 touchdowns. They had to settle for 2 field goals. That, to me, regardless of whatever happened at the end of the game, that told the story of the game.
Well, they block a punt, and they
line.
failed to score a touchdown after recovering it at the 1. I would have tried to scoop and score there because you're going to get the ball there anyway.
They had a false start here, so that takes the.
They had 9 false starts that game,
Correct.
Dom. 9, just penalties that just set you back.
And that's, to me, where, granted, this is eons ago. This was September 9th, this football game. But that's the kind of talent they possess. That's why for Bison fans, all right, they maybe had their clunker 2 weeks ago in the Brawl of the Wild. This is a really talented football team.
NDSU had its clunker against University of North Dakota. South Dakota State game down there wasn't exactly the greatest. But I still think Montana State, I don't know if we have the last play of the game.
It's coming. Don't you worry.
Yeah, I'm going, wow, this is the team. Physically, here's the thing. Physically, they matched up with South Dakota State. And that's where I think the Bobcats have improved the most over time, over Vigen's, it's 3 years. But over the last 10 years, they've gotten better physically for the most part. Now, the Bison have drilled them in the playoffs, but I'm talking about an entire body of work over the course of a season. They've gotten better at the line of scrimmage.
Here's the play you're referencing. Chambers, initially they thought maybe he was over the line of scrimmage. That angle, I think, still looks like a touchdown.
It does.
You're going to see it slow down from both angles. A, if he was over the line of scrimmage, which he wasn't, and B, if they had a foot in bounds. He's right even there with the line of scrimmage.
That's debatable.
You got to have all three parts, but this is the angle, Jeff, and we never got a better explanation. That looks like a touchdown to me.
That is a touchdown. Certainly not enough to overturn it. And they overturned it.
It was.
Oh, my goodness.
And of course, we know what ended up happening. The last play got knocked down, and the Jackrabbits ended up winning. That was the only scare that they got all season long. South Dakota State was offered by this Montana State team. But my last point on this before we move on, it says something about how you're playing going in. The Bison are playing their best ball right now. Frankly, Montana State isn't. And I wonder off the bye how much you can change your mojo around.
Can you regenerate a little bit? And I think obviously that's what Brent Vigen's counting on. He's not new. He was through the FCS wars with NDSU for 2011, 12, 13. They had a bye every one of those 3 years. And so Craig Bohl was a master of figuring it out and having his team playing the freshest at the end of the year.
Lastly, before I go, the news broke as we were on the air on Monday morning on Hot Mic. The Delaware is the latest exodus, the FCS for the FBS. They'll be leaving for Conference USA come 2025. We were there just a couple years ago. I mean, this was the side where we're at is actually the renovated side of the football stadium. This is a steeped in history program. They haven't won an FCS title since 2003.
That's a nice renovation there, right?
This is a program that's been aching to do this, and I wasn't surprised when we saw the news this morning.
Well, they've been okay, I think, for the most part in FCS. There's been a couple good years, but generally, I think it's an underachieving program. Yes. I really do. Maybe they'll be better at FBS. Maybe this move up, they'll take like South Dakota State was very average in Division II, has become very good in Division I FCS. Delaware, average, I think, for what it could be in FCS. Yeah. Maybe going to FBS will bring in a different caliber of player, and maybe it'll generate some more funding because it's all about funding. You're getting in a different NIL world, by the way, with FBS.
Oh, there's no doubt. There's
if you want to be good,
want to talk to you, right?
Yeah, if you want to be good, certainly. But maybe Delaware, maybe they'll bring out some boosters that have been silent.
That's the part. If there's a different letter designation, more people with money would say, okay, well, I'll be willing. Who are you playing now? Oh,
that was huge with NDSU. Irv Iniger beating the path. Yeah. All that fundraising stuff since Joe Chapman said yes, go. Irv Iniger was crisscrossing the country raising funds, and people were writing checks because it's Division I now.
On the flip side, it's just what is left in this division. It's the Mondax now. It really is. It's the Montanas, North Dakota State, and South Dakota State.
It's the Big Sky and Valley. It really is,
and it's not getting
I'm not really
any better.
Sure what else.
It's not getting any better. I can tell you that right now. You're going to have a column about it later in the week. I encourage everybody to read it because when NDSU last went to Montana, it was the East Coast was here and everybody else down here. It has gone the exact opposite in 13 years.
The balance of power has flipped for, I think, several reasons.
Yeah, and the CAA, remember we did the stories of it. They were the SEC of the FCS. It is long since gone from that, right?
Yeah, that's... I think once James Madison left, it was like, okay, the air got taken out of the CAA.
And you think of it with Richmond, JMU, Villanova. They had a stretch there. They won 3 straight national championships.
New Hampshire was pretty good.
New Hampshire was really good. It's just a long cry from that. Huge week of coverage coming at Inforum and WDAY to get you ready for NDSU and Montana State. Of course, Jeff and I, Logan and Kyle, will be out there for Bison Game Day, 10 a.m. on Saturday morning with the game at 2 o'clock between the Bison and the Bobcats on ESPN+. For Jeff Kolpack, I'm Dom Izzo. That's the Bison Video Blog, brought to you by Gate City Bank.